Okay, good morning to one and all. This is M. Shakti, heading the Department of Computer Science, Nalamuthukaundar Mahalingam College, Pollachi. Leading gives creativity. Creativity leads to thinking. Thinking provides knowledge, and knowledge makes you great. Said by our eminent and former president of our country, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. With these words, on behalf of our institution and my home department, I'm happy to welcome all the dignitaries, resource and participants from various parts of our country who have joined virtually to this 7 days faculty development program on data science. I'm happy to share that this FDP is blessed with the valuable and intellectual expertise in different domains to enlighten us. Once again, I'm happy to welcome all the participants for this knowledge enhancement program. Now I welcome Mr. Sendil Kumar, Associate Director, PwC India, Bangalore, to share about innovation and emerging technology in IoT and cloud solution. Thank you.
நன்றி வணக்கங்கள். Right away I am going to get into the subject. Thank you for all your attention.
Sir,
Can you see my screen?
Sir, yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, madam.
Sir, but
good morning
okay.
to everyone who joined the call today. To introduce about myself, I work as an associate director handling emerging technologies at PwC India. I also look at the innovation offerings for PwC. We primarily help large companies to roll out IoT-based projects, roll out augmented reality programs, and we also help them to identify new ideas and convert them into solutions that solve their business problems. So my background is that I come from PhD College of Technology. I did an MBA and a master's in electronics. I did an MBA from IIM Kozhikode. Last 15 years, I've been looking at various technologies which have been evolving around networking, around communication and devices. I used to work in a semiconductor company, which gave me a good view of how semiconductor components are manufactured and how the business works in general. And when Dava Priya madam approached me asking if I can speak about IoT, I was very happy that I've been recognized as somebody who can speak about IoT, and I'm glad to have taken this opportunity, and I'm glad to have been offered this opportunity by you, ma'am. And without much wastage of time, let me jump into Internet of Things. Back when I started off as an engineer, fresh engineer, there was nothing called IoT. It was only about how networks work, how computer networks work, and there was a mobile network. It was not even called as 2G because outside the technical world, nobody knew that there is something else that is going to come up. So it was called just a mobile network. Slowly, as the devices evolved, the cost of hardware reduced. People started seeing that, okay, we need better networks, faster networks. And 10 years back, we did not think that, we are going to have hardware which is going to be very, very powerful, that we can completely run businesses out of the mobile ecosystem. So let me jump into a few slides that I've prepared for IoT. In reality, is the screen changing?
No, sir. It's in title slide only. Sir, please go for presentation slideshow.
Yeah. Okay. So today it's a short session, and what I wanted to achieve is to cover a little bit of basics, get you the conversation of IoT languages, how to understand the few terminologies in the IoT world, and equip you to decide what needs to be done in various situations. Let me see if I can take this off. I'm just trying to remove this grid lines here. So
Okay, sir.
let's take notice of this IoT world. What is IoT? It is just a network of circuits which can talk with each other so that we can measure, monitor, and understand and create great consumer experiences. Consumer experience again was not something that we had or we ever spoke about 10-15 years ago. But now we have this network of circuits. I call it as network of circuits because be it a computer or a mobile phone or a laptop or a tablet, and today anything that pretty much has a connectivity component involved is an IoT device. So we will in the discussion we will see what type of connectivity, what type of device, what type of options that we have for hardware and software. But let's take a step back and see what is this. Is it something new? I don't think so. The card swiping machines that you have commonly across everywhere, every shop that we go to is an IoT device because it does something. It takes some data and then transfers on the network. Your office ID card machines, it is an RFID based device which measures, or which reads your ID card, goes back to the server and checks whether that's a valid ID card or not, and gives you access. It's a kind of an IoT device. Your smart watches, your TVs, smart TVs are all IoT devices because as per our definition, any circuit that can talk with another circuit is an IoT device. Are they Internet of Things? Yes. And why? Because it's a set of microprocessor circuits along with the connectivity module. On the right side, I just wanted to show that, the connectivity module I've shown in SIM card based GSM connectivity, but pretty much any kind of connectivity will work and which will apply for the definition of IoT. And is it new? Again, it's not new. It's been around for us with us for a very long time. We used to have these analog radios earlier, and then we have this digital radios and digital players. Then we have this pages. We used to have these pages. So we started with an analog radio, and then we added some amount of intelligence to it. And then now you have the sensor intelligence and connectivity to it. Here, the sensor was an RF signal, radio signal that comes on from a transmitter. Here, pretty much we held on to the radio signal, except that the radio signal can come wirelessly or it can come in the form of a cassette. Here, it's again the sensor is a radio sensor, and there is intelligence and network. But what happened to all of these? They've all become obsolete. They mean around from the 1960s, 50s maybe, or 30s maybe, but now they're all obsolete. So what happened in between? Why suddenly we are talking about IoT devices and we are thinking that these are all great? There was a couple of drivers which pushed IoT into the mainstream. The reduced computing cost, reduced storage cost, and the reduced connectivity cost. If you bought an iPad, say in 1950s, for the same amount of processing power, we would have spent around 1,000 trillion. But the same amount of power that used to sit, or more, there is more amount of microprocessing power that sits on your iPad or an iPhone than what we sent in our Apollo mission to the moon. So essentially, the price of computing has come down, and the price of computing is essentially our ability to push as much as transistors into our microprocessors as possible. So today, if you take an i7 processor, it probably has billions of transistors. And earlier we did not have that kind of power that was cheap enough for people to use. So that is one primary reason. The second reason is the storage cost. So I have an image of somebody holding a 200 MB hard disk in the 1980s. It's 200 MB today. That is something that number is something that we don't even consider as storage. But today in 2015, a 10 dB hard disk was fitting into the hand, palm. One, the size has reduced, the reliability has increased, and at the same time the cost also went down, right? So if you look at 1960s, the cost of 1 GB of memory was almost $1 million, and today if you go to Amazon EC2, you can get it actually less than $0.2. So there's $0.2 is almost nothing, right? A few rupees. So the cost per storage has fallen down a lot, which enables you to create a lot of data, as well as you can store them and work on them. So that's where all your cloud computing and websites and online applications have come. What's the next one? The next one is the number of network subscribers in the world. Almost all the areas where human population is there is now covered by at least a 2G network. Either it's a 2G network or a 3G network or a 4G network, but we have enough network coverage across this world, across the planet. And you have more number of network subscribers than the number of people in this world. So I think that in one way is reduce the cost. Another way, you could also say that wherever you are in the world, you should be able to connect to some kind of a network nearby and then reach any other device across the world. So these three inventions or these three changes has really pushed what we called as circuits and computer science and software development into a completely networked computing environment, and that is what we have as that is what we call as IoT today. So in between there is this digital era, right? We spoke about the processing power, the memory, and the communication. And somebody said that, okay, let's add a few sensors to it. And suddenly I have an intelligent device taking sensor data, either processing it or not processing it, but it is transferring that over a network and then storing it in some far off location. This became a very powerful concept as we started developing applications or finding new applications. A couple of decades ago, we had what is called as SCADA networks. All these huge government companies measure the water temperature or water availability in from dams, reservoirs to your cities. They wanted to see if the water is really flowing through those pipes or not. So, and it was very hostile environment or it's very remote environments. They put some sensors over there to detect water, and they were measuring that, and they were basically seeing whether that was working or not, whether there was water or not. These were called as SCADA networks, but they were very expensive at that point of time. Slowly, as the processor cost came down and the memory cost came down and the connectivity came down, we decided that, okay, these we can probably make small footprint devices which will not even consume a lot of power. So it will be powered by batteries, and then we take the data from there and store it in a cloud environment. Once we store that in a cloud environment, then we can accumulate data over a period of time and then do a lot of processing on it. So that turned out to be analytics. It's a completely different world of data processing, and we call them as analytics. Now, because of this, what we started doing is we thought, okay, let me reduce, or let me make my product more intelligent. And the way I do it is, I have a hardware which is primarily the sensor. Then I have the firmware, which is the code, or which is a program that runs on the microprocessor. The microprocessor takes data from the sensor and does some basic operations on that. And then I need to give it to a device driver, which converts into understandable data for operating systems. That operating system was running applications which was consuming this data. So the application does not know how a thermometer is going to send me the data. The thermometer will probably send me pulses. At an application level, I don't have to worry about how many pulses I'm getting. The OS is going to convert that, the firmware is going to convert that, and then give me something that I can understand. And we started building millions and millions of applications like this. And then suddenly people found out that people are not really comfortable with very comfortable with the applications. So to make those applications more easier, we invented, or a new field completely evolved, which is called as a user experience. So all these components, hardware, firmware, device drivers, operating systems, applications, and user experience we started applying them in our product designs, and that gives us a completely different or completely new set of products in the market, or products that we use in our daily lives. Most of us are comfortable with our mobile phones, but these connected appliances or connected products are making life easier in industries, in automotive industry, for automotives, for hospitals, for medical equipment. So name it, wherever data is sensed and processed, we have these IoT devices. All of them are IoT devices, which consume this data, and then we make sense out of it. So, okay, so this gave into this developed into a multiple area. So if you go into applications, that's one huge world that is there in applications. Again, device drivers, hardwares, firmware, OS, user experience. So I was just explaining how each one of these subjects or fields grew because of the factors that I told about, which is computing, memory, and connectivity. So I will probably jump quickly into another area, which is very basic actually. What is a microprocessor, right? Most of us here know it. So I'm going to just skip a little bit and go into the next one and see how the microprocessor essentially works, right? The microprocessor is very limited. It will have a set of instructions, which we call as machine instruction set. And we need to write programs in assembly language. But a lot of this has changed recently. I'll be explaining that. So if the microprocessor understands only this set of instructions, and I have to write program like this, which is going to be very difficult if I'm thinking about how to if I'm thinking about how to write programs and if I'm thinking about user experience, this is not going to help me to create a lot of great user experience. So I thought, okay, let me write my programs in a language which I understand, which is, so C has been a very popular language throughout the past 2-3 decades. So great, my application, which is a Microsoft Word, asks, can you print my contents? And then the operating system says, yeah, sure, I can do that. But then I have to give that data to the printer, which does not accept or understand anything but machine language. So I need a device driver which will convert that. There is another thing that also happened. As he started pumping in a lot of transistors into one device, one very small microprocessor. So if you take an Intel i7 microprocessor, right, it is not going to be more than half the size of your fingernail, right? So, and then you are processing so much of data on that. It has multiple cores, it has memory in it, and then processor graphics and so on. So it generates a lot of data, lot of energy, actually, lot of heat gets generated. So this is important because as we started developing IoT devices, as we started developing all these IoT devices, power is a major constraint, because I'm probably converting this, running these embedded systems using batteries in remote locations, and I don't want my battery to run out as really fast. And all this heat that is getting generated is essentially energy that is getting wasted. So one of the things that we had to do was to ensure that this heat gets dissipated. One, if I cannot stop generating heat, at least I need to get that heat out of my processor. Otherwise, my processor will burn out. So here you are seeing Intel microprocessor and the associated heat sink along with it. So if you are thinking of building servers, this really works. You can have an Intel processor and a huge heat sink to dissipate all the heat. But I don't have that kind of freedom to choose such a huge heat sink or a fan or heat dissipation system for a mobile phone, which is a very handy device. Or I don't even have that kind of a freedom to create an IoT device with that kind of a heat sink. So what do I do? That is where there is this company called ARM, which created a new set of microprocessors, which are called as complex instruction set processors. So what essentially happens is, for a reduced instruction set computing, to say it in a very layman words, there is Intel on one side and then all others on the other side. Intel manufactures reduced instruction set compute devices, which is very efficient in terms of Intel produces CISC processors, complex instruction set processors, which is, you have a huge amount of instruction sets available, which means that the processor can be very fast. A lot of the operations that I want to do is already programmed into it, but when I'm doing it, I'm going to generate a lot of heat. Whereas a reduced instruction set compute processor is going to have very little instructions in it, and if I have to do some complex operations on it, then I have to write the program for it. But in these ARM-based CISC processors, RISC processors, I don't have to do a lot of operations on the processor, and hence the heat generated is going to be little. It's not going to be huge. So I can save a lot of energy, and of course I lose a lot of compute power in a way. I cannot use the A9 processor from Apple in a laptop, for example, right? So it cannot generate, so it cannot do a lot of processing. but slowly we are going to a level where whether it is CISC or RISC, the compute power is huge, especially with augmented reality applications and some of the new mobile phones that you get. It's already multiple cores, quad core and octa-core processors in an ARM format, in the RISC format, right? So we are getting the best of both the worlds. Huge amount of compute power and very little uh, heat generation, heat dissipation. Somebody said that they're not able to hear. I hope everyone is able to hear, please.
Yes, sir.
We're good? Okay, thank you. All right, so we spoke about processors, memory, connectivity, and everything. So how does it all come together in an IoT device? So I have a sensor which essentially gives me an analog signal. I probably will have a ADC which converts the analog signal into a binary number, goes into a processor, and let's take a detour from here. The processor is going to give that to a cloud server, for example, an IoT cloud, through a network. A network could be a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, Zigbee, your Ethernet, GSM, depending on what type of device it is. And it goes through the internet and goes through the cloud server. The cloud servers, there are different types of cloud applications. Essentially, everything is a computer sitting there, but a cloud which is optimized for IoT has some special features. I'll cover that in a minute. But what I wanted to show you is, if the data is processed in the cloud and then comes back to the processor through the network module, again, that is converted into an analog signal through a DAC, and that DAC feeds into an activator. For example, it can run a pump. So most of you by now would be thinking that there is nothing new that I'm talking. This is what you've been doing for the past few decades. And just because they are smaller and then cheaper, and it's more pervasive in terms of connectivity and availability of hardware, we call them as IoT devices. Okay. Okay, so what are these languages, right? What is so different in terms of IoT devices? Whenever you create a network device, you're talking about what is the type of connectivity that will come in. So 2G, 3G, and 4G were very popular for mobile phones for audio communication, for human audio communication, to be very precise. And these devices, these technologies are spread out throughout the world. We have almost covered 99% of the human populated areas around this planet. So it's very easy to adopt something like a 2G or a 3G module when you're developing an IoT device. But there are other protocols which can be chosen based on the specialized applications that we are developing. So for example, Bluetooth is a near field communication protocol that has been developed for mobile phones and primarily for our headsets and laptops to communicate with each other. In the IoT space, there is Zigbee, Z-Wave, which are primarily low power networks. If you take a 4G cellular network module, the amount of energy that it consumes under the, if you have to adhere to the GSM protocol stack, the amount of communication that I need to do with the nearest tower, I need to be always pinging the nearest tower. I need to find out what is the triangulate all the time. I need to find out the power availability from different towers around me and keep sending signals. So 4G is going to consume a lot of data, but it probably, it's going to consume a lot of data. It's going to consume a lot of power, but probably I don't need a 4G network just to say that I'm in this position. The payload that I have does not warrant a 4G network, which is sorry. Okay, something happened. I hope we are still connected. So a 4G network is consuming a lot of power because it needs to communicate with the towers really, really fast and very frequently. So people said that let's use ZigBee, which is not going to consume so much of energy. And similarly, there are other Wi-Fi and Dash 7 and a number of people came out with their own protocols, but most of them did not stick, or they stuck only in very, very specialized applications that they have developed for. So the most common network that we use today is 2G and 3G, and considering that 2G is being switched off in most of the countries, it looks like 3G and 4G are the most preferred network for general IoT applications. I'll quickly jump into this GSM. GSM started as an analog communication system. So it was based on TDM, time division multiplexing. And by 1976, they had only 543 users because that is all the network or the bandwidth that they had. So we had to get into a digital form. And once you get into a digital form, you apply. So today in 2G and 4G, you apply a combination of FDM and TDM technologies to achieve massive amount of network connections within the cell. So even the cellular network is called as a cellular network because within each cell there is FDM that happens, and since it is accumulated or it is managed at a base station center level, and then it gets pushed to the main switching center, you can accommodate literally millions and millions of parallel communications at the same time. This is very important because we have moved from people talking to each other to devices transmitting data with each other. So once a device starts transmitting data, then the number of devices that are going to get connected to your network is going to be huge. And that is where GSM networks prove to be very, very resilient and scalable for IoT applications. So this just shows the growth of 2G, 3G, and 4G. Essentially, what is happening is an amount of data that I'm able to push through each one of these networks has multiplied from 2G to 4G. And today we are talking about 5G. It's an amalgamation of multiple protocols that enables us to compress as much as data possible into the same channel. So what are these protocols? Protocols are essentially some kind of what do you say? I've shown the pictures here though. So protocols are essentially ways and means of showing or communicating. So instead of saying that I respect you, the picture shows how somebody is showing respect. How do I wish someone? If I don't have to open my mouth and tell it in a particular language, but if I do this, most of the human population will understand that he is wishing me. And similarly, we have a dining etiquette. So these are all protocols which convey certain information. Similarly, when a device starts talking, there's a protocol that it will follow. So here you have device 1 and 2. One is speaking in a different language, the other one speaking in a different language. So they agree upon saying that let's speak hex. And in the hex domain, they start transmitting data, they are talking. And before talking, they also agree upon what is the kind of volume that I will use, what the kind of tone that I would use. So it's pretty much like human interaction. How will I talk with my family? How will I talk with a stranger? How will I talk with, in a formal environment? So the machines also decide how they want to talk with each other, and then and they also agree how long will you talk and everything. So it's like a meeting. I come into the meeting, I say hello, and then we agree that we will speak in English. I will speak for an hour. I will speak about this topic, and then I go out. So this is essentially a protocol implemented in the computer domain, in a machine domain for communication. And I touched upon protocol because there are a few protocols which are important for IoT environments. So IoT, as I said, is a very constrained environment in terms of space, in terms of connectivity, sometimes, depending on the type of network connectivity that you choose. So there is a very popular one which is called as MQTT, and then you have AQMP and STOMP, which is used in specialized environments. But MQTT is a very popular IoT protocol that is used across for most of the applications, and it's an open source protocol which has been which was developed by IBM. Later, Microsoft joined in, and now it's pretty much the standard for IoT applications. It is not very different from I2C or SPI or CAN bus or UART, which we use for our in-circuit communication. So at a circuit level, you use I2C, SPI, CAN, UART to talk between different electronic components or processors. At a network level, you are using Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and so on. Similarly, MQTT and AQMP and STOMP are all protocols at an application level for communicating using for IoT devices. And why? What is so different about these IoT communication? Before I get there, right? When you have an IoT device sitting somewhere, it's a machine, right? It's a remote. Probably I probably will not be able to see whether the machine is actually working or not. So, and it's also possible that it does not have network connectivity for significant periods of time, and then it connects once in a while, depending on what type of application that I have. I may not want to enable the network often because I want to conserve energy. So in such environments, my cloud application, the application which is going to receive the data from the cloud, needs to know that this device is available or not available, this has sent data or not. So there is an asynchronous communication that will happen. It is not SMTP, because in SMTP, pretty much the devices are alive all the time. But it's a kind of an SMTP, but there is what we call as an MQTT broker, which sits on both sides. This broker guy will ensure that data is received. It's called as a broker in technical terms, but it works like a post office. Data comes in, I will take it, and then I will put it in a particular pigeonhole. And whoever needs that data, they will come and look into their particular pigeonhole and take it. So this pigeonhole concept is like, we call it as topics in MQTT broker. When an IoT device sends data, it says that I am sending the data and this needs to go into somebody's address. So it's essentially a destination address. It goes and sits in that particular box, and instead of the postman coming and delivering the information to you at your address, you have to go to the post office and take it. So that is what a broker is. I will skip this section because we have already spoken about how microprocessors work. So microprocessor instruction set at a processor level, and then you have the firmware which runs on the circuit board, and then you have the operating system. Now they're all at a very basic level, at the hardware level, but to create great applications of IoT, I was talking about applications and user experience, right? That is enabled by a huge set of programs or applications above the operating system. So you have the device, then you have the communication protocol, platform. So this core platform is what is going to create value for you. What if I'm sensing some data and then it is getting pushed to me? What do I do with the data? I will have to store it, I will have to clean it, I will have to send it to the right set of people. Probably I need to create alarms, I need to highlight to certain people about this type of data that is coming in. So all that is done by the core platform. And I also want to learn out of this data. I want to know whether this data is that, what is the pattern of this data? Can I understand why this kind of data comes in? What are the values that comes in? Over a period of time, can I get more insights out of it? So that becomes our analytics. Can I convert that into more complex context oriented space, which is where you have interactions? I have an IoT device which is sending me temperature, and I look at the temperature and plot it on a graph. Life is good. I plot that data for a month and see that every Sunday my temperature goes up. That is information for me, which is essentially analytics. But at any given point of time, can I call that device and say that, hey, what's the temperature now? Then I start interacting with the data. And I can probably also ask the application itself, what is the predicted temperature next Sunday? So then it becomes a cognitive, interactive application. And then if by having all these technology solutions around me, can I apply that for my day-to-day applications? Can I tell my chimney to switch off when the milk is boiling and it's going to come out of the vessel? So a chimney here is a IoT device. It's going to listen to me. It has cognitive abilities. It listens to me and then converts into an action. And then finally at the device level, it needs to switch off the hob when milk is going to come out of the vessel. So this whole stack of different sets of applications will be required on one side. On another side, on the third pillar, I have shown a bunch of things, which is very, very important again, which is the security. If I have something like that, I don't want anyone to come and start operating my home appliances, right? So then I had to think about security right from the device level, how it is manufactured, how it is distributed, how it is installed, and who is going to operate at an application, what type of application will use it. So this whole one huge vertical of security is very, very important when we start deploying IoT applications. This slide, essentially, I'll share this with you, madam, later. So this is essentially the set of applications or set of tools that are available from different companies, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon, open source, and Predix, and there are literally millions of other, thousands of other stacks, IoT stacks that are available. And what are the tools available under each of them. So when you build an IoT application, you will typically choose one or more of each at each layer to build a complete IoT application, apart from the hardware that is already available. So with this, again, I want to bring your attention to how an IoT appliance is built, right? So you have your user experience, you have applications built on it, you have a firmware which is going to create all those amazing, generate all those amazing data out of the sensors, and your processors, which will finally decide what this home appliance will do. And then you have the network, and then you have the platform, which is the cloud applications, cloud system, cloud platform, where you collect the data, gather insights, protect the device, and then probably you can also think of maintenance of the device. So this is a quick overview of how an IoT ecosystem works, and it's already changing businesses. You have connected coffee machines, you have bicycle sharing, you have car sharing, you have entirely new set of different new business models which have evolved, and it's already available in India, which we could not think of a few years earlier because of hardware cost and connectivity issues and non-availability of cloud computing at an affordable levels. But with once this got opened up, there are huge number of new business models that are coming up. Thank you so much for listening to my 1 hour session on IoT. I would probably open up for questions. Just ask me any questions that you have. Thank you for the opportunity, guys. Asking what are the probable research areas in IoT? Network security, MS security or IoT security is very, very important. The health bands that we wear are all IoT devices, and they have very little or no security, except if you go for very complex integrations. Some of the large companies, when they come out with these devices, they have some kind of protection, but it's very easy to hack into most of the IoT devices if you know what are the protocols and how they have implemented it. So that's one area that you can look at. I hope that I answered your question. Possible challenges to IoT. Deployments, mass deployments have not started happening. Once I'll take the next question in a minute. So mass deployments have not started happening, but once that happens, we will know what kind of network congestion that we will have. There's going to be a huge amount of pressure on the networks to handle the data that is coming from these millions of devices. That is one primary challenge that I see today. The second challenge is the security. Irrespective of the application, all these devices should be secure so that people cannot hack into the networks. And because these devices are prevalent, they are going to be around us in pretty much most of our life. It's important that they are secure enough. So at UG level, the next question that came in, at UG level, you can probably focus on building IoT solutions at a cloud level. There are multiple cloud IoT providers available today, Amazon, Google, Microsoft. So probably you can start understanding how these systems work and then start writing programs. And these cloud systems are so easy today that you don't even have to understand programming languages. It's all block-based programming, so it's pretty easy to deploy an IoT application today. Can probably start from there. New trends. Okay, so we are now looking at different types of applications. There's a lot of new applications that people are trying to come up with using IoT in different sectors. The technology is available, hardware is available, platforms are available. Then different types of business problems or consumer problems that we need to sort is something that is still evolving. For example, I came across a company which was talking about an IoT device which can help control your posture. It will basically tell you whether you are sitting upright or not. So that is already available in India, and a lot of doctors are prescribing it for people with back pains. There is bicycle sharing that is already available. There is bicycle sharing that is already available in most of our cities here. There is your health bands, which is a type of an IoT product which is available. So yes, IoT products are already available in the market today, but they are not exactly called as IoT. Most of your factory machines which are connecting to the servers for preventive maintenance or for upgrading themselves are all IoT devices. When I say factory equipment, it could be manufacturing equipment, textile equipment, any type of a device. Even your cars today are all enabled with IoT. Most of the connected cars take the engine parameters and then package them and send it to the manufacturer through your mobile application, so that the manufacturer will know whether your car is performing well or not. So it's already available. It's right in front of you.
If anyone wants to ask any question, means please use the raise hand option. I will unmute your mic. Then you can ask Senthil sir directly.
Working with business. See, everybody is focusing only on.
Is it audible?
Customer is the center of everything.
Yes, sir. It is audible.
Still, you work very closely with. Even they took the word development.
Agenda session. If there are no questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I would like to thank Mr. S. Senthil Kumar for giving us a wonderful session on IoT and emerging technology. So I also thank all the participants for their kind cooperation. So let us join for tomorrow's session sharply at 10 o'clock.